Every few years, the National Electrical Code gets an update. And usually, the whole point is to make things clearer for the pros out in the field. But the 2023 edition, it introduced a new rule, Section 215.18, that's done the exact opposite. It's a real head-scratcher that is even the most seasoned electricians debating what it actually means. So let's dive in and decode this thing together.
At the very heart of all this confusion is a pretty simple question. For a normal house, one with a main panel and a subpanel, does this new code mean you need one surge protector or two? Well, the answer is proving to be anything but simple.
And hey, this isn't just some theoretical problem. We're looking at a direct quote from an electrician named Pat Powers on a professional forum. He lays out the core issue perfectly. The new rule seems to be doubling the requirement, and he's just trying to figure it out. And believe me, he is not alone.
Okay, so to really figure this out, we have to go straight to the source. Let's look at the evidence and break down the exact wording of this new code piece by piece.
First up is subsection A. This part is all about the where. It identifies the specific types of buildings where this new surge protection rule actually applies. It's not for every single building, but a very targeted list.
And here's that list. We're talking about places where people live and sleep. Our homes, dorm rooms, hotels, even patient rooms and nursing homes. So the code is clearly focused on protecting these residential-type spaces.
All right, now subsection B gets really specific about where this surge protective device, or SPD, has to be installed. It says the SPD has to be on the load side of the feeder. What's that? Well, that's the wiring that runs from a main panel to a subpanel. So basically, it has to be located right at the subpanel, next to the breakers it's supposed to be protecting.
Section C? This one's super straightforward. It just gives the tech specs. You can't just slap any old surge protector in there. It has to be either a Type 1 or a Type 2 device to meet the code. Simple as that.
And finally, D&E just wrap up the last few details. So if you replace something like a subpanel, you now have to bring it up to this new standard. And the device itself? It has to be beefy enough to handle a discharge of at least 10,000 amps. So the key takeaway here is that the text seems very, very specific.
So, we've read the law. Seems pretty clear, right? Well, this is where things get really messy, because how professionals are interpreting that language in the real world, that's a completely different story.
This slide just breaks down this central conflict perfectly. On one hand, most pros believe the intent of the rule was simple. Just add one surge protector at the main service panel to protect the whole house. Easy. But on the other hand, the actual wording, especially that phrase load side of the feeder, it points to something else entirely. It suggests a protector is also required at every single subpanel.
And listen to this quote from another professional, Blue Line Electric TX. They get right to the point. They just say, I think the language is messed up. This really highlights that gap between what people think the rule means and what it literally says. It puts electricians in a tough spot.
Then you have an inspector, Texie, who points out the massive real-world consequences. I mean, think about a big apartment building. If every single feeder going to every single apartment subpanel now needs its own surge protector, wow, the cost and complexity of those jobs just went through the roof.
Okay, so let's see how this whole debate creates these practical, everyday questions out on the job site. Because when the code is this confusing, electricians have to start second-guessing even the most common jobs. So here's a super specific question from a user named LeeSpark57. A hot water heater, it often has its own little cutoff switch, a fused disconnect. Does the wiring going to that count as a feeder? And if it does it now need its own surge protector? See, this is where that ambiguity creates real-world headaches.
So, to answer that question, you have to understand a really fundamental electrical concept. Is the wiring for that hot water heater a feeder, or is it a branch circuit? The entire application of this new rule hangs on that one little distinction.
Okay, so let's define our terms. A feeder is the set of wires that runs from your main panel to a subpanel, feeding it power. Makes sense, right? Then, the circuits that run from that subpanel to your individual outlets and appliances, like a hot water heater, those are called branch circuits.
And boom! There's our answer, thanks to a forum member named Short Circuit 2. The circuit for the hot water heater is the final stop on the line. It's a branch circuit, not a feeder. So, this confusing new rule does not apply here. Whew, okay, one mystery solved.
So here we are. We have a messy, confusing rule that's causing all sorts of headaches for professionals. But this isn't the end of the story. In fact, the process to fix it, it's already happening. It is so important to remember that the NEC isn't some ancient text carved in stone. It's a living document. It gets updated every 3 years based on feedback, new technology, and real-world experience from people out in the field. Confusion like this is exactly what the revision process is designed to fix.
And here's the proof. That same forum member, Short Circuit 2, points out that multiple public inputs, or PIs, have already been submitted for the 2026 code cycle. And one of them, PI 4415, has new language specifically designed to clear up this exact confusion. So help is on the way.
And that really brings us to the big picture, doesn't it? This whole debate isn't just about wires and compliance, it's about protection. As our homes get filled with more and more expensive, sensitive electronics, smart TVs, connected appliances, the whole shebang, the question of how we protect that investment from electrical surges becomes more important than ever. This confusing rule is just one small part of a much bigger effort to find the right answer.